Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses and make more money. And live every day like it's Friday. All right. Episode 100.
We made it.
Yeah. You know, we've done a lot of episodes over the past couple years, and we made it all the way to episode 100.
It's crazy.
Now, our strategy, we cheated a little bit because most of our interview episodes are two-parters. So
50 interviews, but 100 episodes.
That's right. Exactly.
I mean, why aren't we editing these down into like 1 minute clips? We could have like 1,000 episodes by now.
That's true. That would be so awesome.
Your daily minute.
Every minute. We have 1,000 episodes.
Live every minute like it's Friday. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, they say that that you'll have more success if you do like more episodes a week. Like, for instance, one of the biggest, like, it's cliche now to talk about Joe Rogan at this point because he gets millions and millions of downloads each month for his podcast. He's abnormal when it comes to podcasting. But all that being said, is he even says that things really started to take off for him when he started recording more than one episode a week. And so
makes sense. Yeah, I've seen some podcasts where people will just come on and they'll literally just read out loud blog articles on a specific topic. So their podcast is just reading aloud articles from whatever. It could be any topic. It's like leadership articles, and they just like read blog articles every day.
Listen, that's valuable. I mean,
100%.
Because there's sometimes, especially, driving, like even commuting to work, my commute's only like 12 minutes, but I do listen to audiobooks and podcasts on that 12-minute commute. So, imagine if someone can read me an article like in 5 minutes instead of me having to read it.
Yeah.
Like, man, I would love that. There's one podcast I listened to. It recently changed its name, but it was called Snacks Daily. And they just kind of give a recap of like the stock market and like what's going on and what companies to look out for. And it's pretty quick, and it's two dudes that are, funny and witty, and it's entertaining for sure. But I think podcasts are a great way to communicate ideas and connect with people. And then especially as a small business, I'm a huge proponent of using it to communicate to a niche audience and present yourself as a thought leader within a space. So if you're like in medical or even like a lawyer or a doctor or, whatever that looks like, whatever your niche space is, like having a podcast gives you access to connect with people and kind of like what we've done. Like, we've kind of sat down and said, oh, like I have this interesting client, or I would like to talk to this author. And we've been able to get access to those people because we've, have a podcast. And so it's been good.
Right. We talk to smart people that would never have the time to talk to us otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. It's like normally we'd have to pay for this advice, but we're getting it for free because we're interviewing you on a podcast.
I wonder if we can do that just with therapy in general. If we just, have therapists on and just let's go deep.
It's like, I would love to talk about my marriage right now.
Yeah, I know someone who, in this hypothetical situation, what would you do? No reason.
Yeah, exactly. I'm asking for somebody else, not myself. Well, hey, after, having 100 episodes, I have a few, like it was hard. And it's cool too, because we started this podcast. I remember you and I were hanging out in Colorado, and we were walking. It was kind of snowy. We were up in the mountains, and we were like walking on this like dirt road and just talking about all this stuff. And the idea of the Friday Habit podcast came up, and we're like, oh, let's do this. And that was like in October.
Yep.
And I was looking back at some of my like journal entries from back then, and I see like in December, it was like, okay, go to the gym 3 days a week, like eat healthier than not, launch the Friday Habit podcast. And so it was like, oh, wow. Like, and that was, in December of 2019. And here we are in August of 2022. And, it's cool. So, but looking back at the episodes, I have 3 that I look back on, looking at all of them. Like there was so many interviews that I was like, oh wow, this was a really great interview. This was a great interview. And this was just a great solo cast. Like you brought a lot of great podcasts to the table. One of my favorites is episode number 2, actually, strategies to beat procrastination. And I love that because I think a lot of times as business owners and self-employed people, that's the number one thing that we have to battle is procrastination, because you don't have anybody over your shoulder micromanaging your time. You don't have anybody, telling you to not watch YouTube or Netflix and to do your work. You're like kind of autonomous and you can do what you want when you want. And that's one of the greatest things about being a business owner, but it's also one of the things that you need to watch out for, because you can waste a lot of time if you're not intentional. So episode 2.
For sure. Man, episode 2, I was so nervous to talk into a microphone.
I remember.
It's probably going to be hard for me to listen to that one, because I know I can probably tell how nervous I was if I listened to it. I'm like,
You're like, oh crap.
Yeah,
exactly. You did great though. And I think one of the cool things that we always get affirmed on is that when we have guests on, usually afterwards is like, wow, that was really a professional show, and you guys have great chemistry. You work really well together. And
that's all okay. The production value. You bring the production value.
Listen,
great.
You bring the content. Okay, so we are a great team.
That's right. That's awesome.
What about you?
Yeah, so I'd say probably one of my favorites was. There was an episode, it was episodes 23 and 24. We had Greg Hickman on. I think I found out about Greg from watching the Future on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was watching an episode and I was like, man, like I loved how Greg really broke down some concepts around productizing your business. Mm-hmm. And as you know, that's like one of my favorite things to work on and try with Knapsack is how do you productize a service and make it a bite-sized, make it so you can fit it on a calendar and make it repeatable, all that kind of stuff. So he's the founder of Alt Agency. And I just enjoyed that conversation. I felt like I learned a lot from him about productizing and also how to kind of spread out your offerings from like a DIY option, a done with you option, and a done for you option, and how you can kind of reach different audiences and have like a little bit more diverse income and stuff like that by having a couple different offerings. So yeah, that was one of my favorites, 23 and 24 with Greg Hickman.
Yeah, I remember that one. And if you are an agency owner trying to figure things out, go back and listen to the episode because it is also very good. And another one to listen to is another one of my favorites, episode 12 and 13, Stop Trading Your Time for Money with Jonathan Stark. And I really got into the value-based pricing kind of around 2019, 2020, really trying to figure out, how do I charge more money for what we do, because at some point, there's a ceiling that you hit, right? Like in the sense of what does it cost to make a video? What does it cost to make a podcast? What does it cost to do graphic design? Or what does it cost to, do digital advertising? And you can only go so long trading your time for money. And one of the things that I started to realize, especially when I was kind of in the trenches and when I was, doing things, kind of doing all the things, was that the better I got at editing, the less I got paid. So it was like I could edit faster. I was better at picking songs and cutting together footage and all these other kind of things. And then it was like, well, now I'm being penalized because I'm better at my job. And how does that make sense?
That's messed up.
Yeah, exactly. And so then I started really doing a lot of research, just trying to figure out, okay, what's an alternative to, charging for your time. And that's when I came across value-based pricing. And then you actually knew Jonathan Stark, which I was like, oh, cool. This guy talks about this. And so that was a really helpful and beneficial episode for me because it's, again, something that we continue to do as an agency. But it takes a little bit more discovery and it takes a little bit more of aligning, with your clients to do, but it's definitely a better way to go. So
for sure. Yeah. Just speaking of Jonathan Stark, I listened to one of his podcast episodes, his podcast Ditching Hourly. It popped up in my feed and I was like, I have to listen to this. It was called, I Regret My $46,000 Website Redesign. And it was him interviewing this guy, Michael Lynch, founder of Tiny Pilot. And it's just this story of hiring an agency. And he thought it was going to cost I think it was $7,000 and be done in a month or two. And it ended up costing $46,000 and taking 9 months or something to build. It was just this train wreck story of what happens when you are misaligned with the agency you're working with. And if there's not a good process to serve you. And I was just I was cringing the whole time. It was hard to listen to, but it's a great episode if you're interested in learning more about that kind of stuff. So
that's awesome.
My number 2 out of my 3 favorites would be How to Live Every Day Like It's Friday with Mark Labriola.
Oh, look at that.
Second. That was such a good episode. I think we recorded that on your birthday.
Yeah.
It was just fun kind of diving deep, your backstory, learning more about your history. I had known some of it, but I think I even learned some new stuff in that interview, kind of going deep into your history. I'm pretty sure you cried on that episode, so that was a landmark.
I know. I was like, dang it. When you get vulnerable,
Exactly. I'd say it's worth tuning in for that alone. And I think we actually went live on Facebook too, I think. Yeah. And so I think that's actually on YouTube, maybe somewhere or Facebook.
Yep, but it is. Yeah.
That was really, I was cool. I think that's some of my favorite stuff is just doing this podcast in general. Some of my favorite things about doing it are just getting to know you more. Cause I think I talk to you more often than pretty much any of my other friends because we're on here consistently, So, anyway, that was a great episode.
Awesome. Yeah, I enjoy. This is one of my favorite times. Is when we get to kind of hang out. It's funny because sometimes we'll have the intention of recording a podcast and we'll hang out and talk for an hour, and then it's all right, well, I got to go now.
Exactly. Yep, it happens. Maybe that should be our just a little thing we've discussed. We haven't officially announced this, but while we're talking about it, one thing we've talked about doing is Fridays after 5 and maybe doing some non-business related episodes here and there. So maybe we'll record some of those conversations and drop them as Fridays after 5 little bonus episodes.
Yeah, I think definitely. And I think we've also been talking about a new segment where we randomly call one of our friends who is either a business owner or a creative, or somebody who's kind of, an expert in a particular field, and just randomly calling them and be like, hey, you're on the show.
Put them on the spot.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think of X, Y, and Z? So yeah, I'm excited for all that stuff. But okay, my last one that, again, it was hard to pick, looking through all the episodes and all the people we've interviewed and all the great conversations we've had, it was really hard to narrow down all right, what are 3? But another one, and this is a book that you showed me or turned me on to, and it's called The Road Less Stupid. And it's a great book, but there's a concept in there about thinking time. And episode 42 was about thinking time, your new secret weapon. And that's just a great episode. And it's a great book. If you haven't read that book or don't, who's the author?
Is it Keith Cunningham?
Yeah, Keith Cunningham. Go check that book out. It's really great. And it just offers you a lot of guidance and a way of doing things and thinking about things. And, sometimes I feel like in business, you kind of hit plateaus or you kind of hit a lack of inspiration. And it's like, man, you just need that new book or new something that kind of inspires you and gets you excited again about I'm excited to work through this process or do this next thing. And that was kind of a standout for me during the time that I got it. So
yeah, that's a super meaningful book. It's a very wise book. It's not gimmicky. It's not quick fix. It's very it's pretty good. I really like that book.
Yeah. It's a no nonsense, just shoot from the hip kind of,
exactly.
And the way that he wrote it too, is you can kind of open up to any section of the book and just start reading it about a particular principle or an idea or something.
Super good. Cool. My number 1 is, I don't know if you remember this episode number 21, Morning Rituals for a Better Life. And this was an episode you and I did together. Mm-hmm. The reason I love this episode, it's my favorite, is because we talked about dry body brushing. I don't even remember why we were talking about this, but we started talking about dry body brushing and I Googled it or something and started reading the description and I just could not stop laughing. I remember after that episode, I was trying to listen back to a few episodes and see take notes of what to do better or whatever. But I just was listening to that walking through Walmart and I was just cracking up like an insane person because That episode just made me laugh so hard. That's probably my absolute favorite one, just because of how ridiculous it was.
Yeah, I know it's. I think it's fun when we especially when we do more of the solo casts. I feel like sometimes we try to do the icebreaker with a guest and they just don't know what to expect, and it's just like, okay, all right, so this is what kind of podcast this is going to be.
All right, I regret this already.
Exactly.
It's so weird how their internet cuts out after the first question.
We did have one guest that will kind of be in this next season of podcast. Yeah, it was very interesting. But do you remember? You know what I'm talking about? Okay.
I do
remember. We kept
remember
losing her. There was like one where it's
yeah.
It was like she was on her iPad or something. Yeah.
That was tough. Well, I do remember we had one person. I don't know if we should say this, but we did interview one person. We just didn't publish the episode because we were just like, this is not useful content, unfortunately. So we have you guys back. We're not going to publish every single thing. But
exactly. I think, did that happen with 2 episodes?
I think
that happened with 2 episodes because one episode, I remember at the end of it, we felt like, because we actually get people requesting to be on the show, which is awesome because it creates a funnel and a pipeline for us to get guests on. And so typically, I try to vet people and make sure that they're going to be a good fit and a good resource for our audiences.
Right.
But yeah, I remember that one. It became a sales pitch. Like, dude, are you here to like inform us and like educate us?
There wasn't any helpful information, unfortunately. Your honesty with him was so good. After the recording, you kind of just told him straight up, like, you basically gave him some advice on like being on podcasts. You're like, all right.
I just feel like it'd be a disservice if I let this person like continue on through life thinking that what he did was a good job.
It was just like that honestly, I feel like you were being clear, which was kind. The whole principle of clear is kind, and you were just like, hey. And I think that person appreciates it from now. I think they do, and you did it in a great way. So
I think there's one other episode too that we didn't post, or maybe we posted it. It was like a multi-level marketing. Did we post that one?
Oh,
I remember we had like a very distinct conversation before, like, hey, like I'm not down with MLMs and I remember you got pretty aggressive with the questioning of this person. And it was like, dude, has Ben been hurt in the past by an MLM?
No, I just was like, I don't want to like sell people on this idea on our podcast. I feel like a responsibility to be skeptical. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. So
no, I don't think we published that one. Or if we did, I was pretty aggressive in the questions of like, I'm very skeptical.
I think we heavily edited it if we did. I'd have to go back and look because I think it was like a while ago. So
yeah.
But yeah, good times, really good times. Well, with all this, it's crazy to think that we started this podcast in January of 2020. So, over 2 years ago. And so I think it'd be interesting to kind of hear like what's changed in your business, since then. Like, where are you now,
For sure. Let me just say, I do have to go pretty soon because I have a very important event coming up. I have a cardboard boat race. So me and my son have built a boat out of cardboard and we have to race it across a pool. So probably have to wrap this up in the next, 5 or 10 minutes. So yeah, let me cover the last 2 years in 5 minutes. I'll just cover the last 2 years real quick.
Yes.
I think, there's a couple of things. Like Knapsack has grown a lot. Like the size of our team's doubled. I think we were at around 5 people, when we started, and we're at 10 people now. I built a giant playhouse in my backyard. These are really random milestones, but that was a thing that I did that I've always wanted to do, is build like a kind of a playhouse for my kids. Last year we bought a camper and a truck, and we've been traveling with that. That's been amazing. My family has gotten to go to Hawaii together for almost a month, and that was like something that I had always dreamed of. So those are like all things that are kind of related to my business that have been accomplishments that I felt like really good about, in the last couple of years since we started. And it just feels like my life is definitely quite a bit different than it was even like 2 years ago. And I just feel, I feel like it's amazing what changes in 2 years when you actually look back. Like you were saying, looking at your journal and stuff like that. It's like my goals a couple of years ago. It's like a lot of them are like, oh, that happened. Other ones I'm like, yeah, no, that was a terrible idea. And I realized it like the next week. I just didn't do it,
Yeah.
But yeah, those are a couple of things. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think, for us, I went from like 0 employees and to all contractors. I had like 10 contractors to 4 employees and 10 contractors. And then I lost 2 employees, which were good. And then I hired a person to replace one of those people. But that was you and I remember talking a lot about, like, it was like the decision to hire somebody for the first time. Like, okay, I'm going to actually like hire a W-2 employee. Like that was really scary. And like, I remember just saying like, should I do this? Should I not do this? Like, whatever. Am I ready for this? And then doing that. And then it was like, then we grew, quickly. And I ended up hiring like 2 more people. And then it was like, oh crap. Like, now I have all these employees. But then it was like, I learned a lot. I had a bad breakup, if you will, like, employee that left that I learned a lot from, and that grew me a lot as a leader and an employer. So that's been amazing and great. And then, we moved into a new studio and office space, which is also...
New studio is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. The new space has just been awesome. It's, again, it was one of those things where I was like, dang, like to take on a rent of $5,000 a month. Like, I don't know if this is a good idea or not. But it's like, one, it's awesome to come into the office every day, and, my employees enjoy the space, and then we've made great relationships with everybody on our floor and in the building. So it's like garnered us new work, and there's a co-working space in the first floor that we're partnering with to provide podcasting services for. So it's just been a great decision, and just a lot of like cool things, So So I'm excited for this next season and the next
100.
The next 100, exactly. And I'm thankful for your friendship, and look forward to see where you end up and where I end up over the next, couple years, and to be able to share with all of our listeners, and hopefully we'll continue to provide inspiration and value to you guys. And please don't hesitate to reach out and give us a review, a comment, or just email us and ask us a question. So I guess that's all we got for you. And Ben, good luck racing those paper boats.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's like where you can get in it and race, so you're in a cardboard box, basically.
Oh, really? That sounds like there's a chance you might get wet.
Exactly. And that's basically, you got to get to the other side before it sinks. So yeah, that's what's going to happen. So I'll send you pictures.
Awesome. You know what? To me, it sounds like you're living today like it's Friday.
That's true. All right.
That's right. We'll see you guys.
See ya.